It's up to you, New York, New York. How we doing? Good morning. Happy Saturday morning. It's the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast here on Facebook and YouTube, and I am your host, Richie. Want to hit on all these game sevens in the National Basketball Association. We've got one today, and we've got two tomorrow. Boston Celtics hosting the Philadelphia 76ers tonight, and I expect a classic. This is a series where the Boston Celtics led 3-1. Joel Embiid's impact has been evident as the Sixers are 2-1 since his return. And quite frankly, if the Celtics are to hold serve at home and prevent blowing a 3-1 lead, it's all about zero. Jason Tatum has absolutely got to step it up. And it's tough right now when you consider that Jason Tatum is dealing with a strain on the leg that he didn't injure. You know, a lot of times when athletes return from a significant injury, they have a propensity for overcompensating with the non-injured leg. And unfortunately, in Jason Tatum's case, that's going on. I mean, I'm sure that he's getting a good deal of treatment. I'm sure that he's going to do what he has to do to power through and attempt to lead his Celtics to the second round. I was recently asked which of these two teams, as a Knicks fan, I would rather play. And to be honest, it's actually Boston, and that's no slight against the Celtics. That would mean that we don't have home court advantage. But when I'm thinking about just who runs point, I personally would rather deal with Jaylen Brown than with Tyrese Maxey, but both teams bring different kinds of challenges. With the Philadelphia 76ers, you're going to get a lot of physicality. You're going to have to, really make sure that you don't get in foul trouble. This is a team that likes to live in the paint. And they also have guys that could slash and get to the rack. As the Celtics go, for better or for worse, this is a team that lives by the three ball. And I admit that in the past, during the regular season, I was very critical of the Knicks' inability to get out to the three-point line and not give the best looks. It reared its ugly head at times in the Atlanta series early. It was really cleaned up during the second half of that series. But, the guy on my avatar, one of the best players in the NBA, one of the best scorers in the NBA, one of the best shot creators in the NBA, one of the best leaders in the NBA. But if there's one thing to poke in Jalen Brunson's game, is his defense. And that alone makes me feel a little more comfortable if he has to deal with Tyrese Maxey. I'm not saying Jaylen Brown is an easy assignment by any means. All these teams are where they are for a reason. And if somebody would have told me the New York Knicks were going to be the first team in the East to be done with their series when they were down 2-1, I would have said you were lying. That's why you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs. My prediction for tonight, however, as I alluded to, I think we're going to get a classic. I noticed that the Celtics are 7.5 point favorites on Hard Rock. I think that's a little too big of a spread. The Celtics are going to find a way to win this game. And I think we're going to get overtime. Give me the Boston Celtics in OT by a score of 118 to 115. I think we're going to see a classic matchup. And one thing I will say is, regardless of who wins, I am really excited about the competition that is waiting in round two. I'm a firm believer that the playoffs in the NBA don't even really start until round two. I want to talk about a former Knick yesterday playing the role of hero north of the border, RJ Barrett. Cleveland Cavaliers, first and foremost, I got to give them credit even in a losing effort. Their defense was sensational in the fourth quarter and pretty much all of overtime. They did lose a challenge on an illegal screenplay that turned mighty, as a player essentially would have been fouled out and it turned into getting a possession. And in OT, when it is such a tight game, every little possession matters. RJ Barrett was off. He said it in the post game that he could not hit a shot. But as a Knick fan, I know that RJ always had a flair for the dramatic when he played with us. But that shot to ultimately win the game with a little over a second left for the Toronto Raptors was reminiscent of what happened in last year's playoffs when Tyrese Halliburton ripped the hearts out of my beloved New York Knicks. A ball that missed initially, went straight up, and then down through the netting. But it's going to be a tall task, in my opinion, for Toronto to win their game 7 because Cleveland is so locked in on defense. I'll be honest, guys, Cleveland shouldn't have lost that game yesterday. Toronto was very, very fortunate, particularly with Cleveland not having a challenge remaining. The critical turnover, I believe, if there was a challenge to be had, probably would have been revealed that it was actually a foul. But, I give Toronto credit for weathering the storm. Cleveland came back. You could tell that the Toronto crowd was very, very nervous. But this has been a classic series. Now, in the preseason, October going into the season, my Eastern Conference prediction was the Orlando Magic and the New York Knicks. I thought the Orlando Magic were a team that was going to make a significant step this year. They underachieved during the regular season. They're in danger of blowing a 3-1 lead. I'll hit on them in a second. But going into the playoffs, now this is not, I'm talking about right when the playoffs started, my Eastern Conference prediction was the Cavaliers and the Knicks. I think the Cavaliers are tailor-made to make life hard for the winner of Orlando and Detroit, and I will say that's probably going to be Detroit at this point. I think Orlando missed their opportunity to put them away. And I've been confident all year long that the Knicks are a better team than the Celtics, regardless of what the standings in the Atlantic Division say. But what makes Philadelphia so dangerous is that this is a team that Joel Embiid missed so much of the season. So I don't think that their record is indicative of how dangerous or how good they could be when all things are clicking. But I will be taking Cleveland at home in a Game 7 victory, as the Cavaliers and the Raptors have just been so good at home. And I think that continues to be the trend. I'll take the Cleveland Cavaliers in a low-scoring affair by a score of 102 to 92 over the Toronto Raptors tomorrow. The Celtics and Sixers are the only game tonight. Orlando Magic had a double-digit lead in the second half. They were not able to keep that lead. Cade Cunningham has played like a madman over the last 2 games. And if the Pistons do hold serve at home in the Motor City, and if they do advance, he is the reason. I want to see more out of Banchero. I want to see more out of Desmond Bane. I want to see more out of anybody wearing an Orlando uniform if they're going to pull off the very rare 8-1 upset. But unfortunately for the Orlando Magic, as I said, yesterday was the day they had to do it. Sleeping giant has awoken, so to speak, in Detroit. And I don't think Detroit's problems are gone. They're still playing a play-in team at the end of the day. And winning this series would be a relief, not something to do a backflip over. Because when you have the kind of season that the Detroit Pistons had, the expectation is much higher. I am thankful as a Knicks fan that the Pistons and Cavaliers, assuming that they both win Game 7, will be canceling out each other. One of them's not going to be in the ECF because as a Knicks fan, those are the two teams that we struggled with the absolute most. Got to give a shout out to the King, LeBron James. Yes, I'm not his biggest fan, but that doesn't make me blind to what he's been able to do in the absence of the best current Laker, Luka Doncic. And I also want to question the character, the toughness to a level of Kevin Durant. I'm not making fun of people's injuries. It's not my injury. It's not my injury to judge. But one thing I have to admit is when it comes to legacy, and these two guys get compared a lot along with Steph Curry because they're all in the same generation, I have to put Kevin Durant behind both of them. Like it or not, however people view LeBron James, some people love him, some people really don't like him, and some people are like, whatever. This man has won a championship with every organization he's played for, the Lakers, the Cavaliers, and the Heat. I would say right now, at his old age, defying the odds and still hanging and being the most important Laker right now in the absence of Luka, he has done everything you could ask of any player to play team ball. The Lakers, that game yesterday against a Houston team that just couldn't find offense, that felt like a game that you would watch in the 90s in the Eastern Conference. The Lakers smothered the Houston Rockets and really just foiled any and all offensive plans that the Rockets had. Now back to Durant. I understand that he hurt himself prior to the series starting in a shoot around, if my recollection is correct. A knee contusion, I get it. But when you're already hearing some rumblings that he's going to try to get out of Houston, potentially rejoin the Warriors, there are other rumors. It's kind of indicative of how Kevin Durant might be the biggest mercenary. It never seems like he's all the way in on any team that he's played with since he's been in OKC. Actually, Seattle into OKC. You know, definitely questionable legacy when you're on an OKC team that has a 3-1 lead against arguably the greatest team of all time in the Golden State Warriors. They didn't win the championship. That's why it's arguable. They had the best regular season record. You're up 3-1 on these guys. 3-1. And then you join them. From a legacy defining standpoint, it's actually worse than what LeBron did. Because unbeknownst to many, the original plan for Miami's former big three of Bosh, Wade, and LeBron was that they all wanted to leave their comfort zones and play somewhere else. It wasn't so much that Wade was above moving. But when the Knicks committed all that kind of money into the Amare Stoudemire situation, they were unable to get Bosh, which was one of the must-haves for their cook-up of the big three, the Heatles. Revisionist history is a very interesting place. Of course, Amare was a decent Knick, but never hit what the Knicks were hoping. And then the Carmelo Anthony trade was scrutinized because the Knicks gave up so much to get one player. And the Knicks were kind of ascending with that role with the litany of role players that they gave up in that deal. All they have to show for it is a second round appearance. Jay Kidd, Tyson Chandler, they brought over some of the old Mavericks, tried to get the Knicks over the hump. They played the Heat well that year, but they didn't get past Indiana that year due to Melo's shoulder injury. But back to this legacy defining thing. When Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors, a team that already had multiple championships under their belt with Steph Curry as their best player, Andre Iguodala as their most pressure-packed player, as he had a Finals MVP. That's all the winning KD has done. And yes, KD was the best player in those series. That's not to be debated. But when I think about guys that are winners above all else, at least in their generation, I've been on LeBron to a level about, nobody ate on Jordan's watch that way, or nobody ate on Magic's watch during that era. Yeah, Bird won, but Magic won more. LeBron has spanned all these different eras, and that's why he has my respect no matter how you slice it. I just don't think he's the GOAT. But when it comes to these three generational talents that have all intertwined into each other's careers, and in Curry's case, he and KD were teammates, it's a distant third place that I put KD behind LeBron and Curry. Best player of the three, in my opinion, LeBron. Most talented, at least from the offensive spec, possibly Durant. Curry obviously is the greatest shooter that ever lived. I have my reservations about what he would have been able to do all the way over in a different era of more physical basketball, because I don't think that he would live on the line the way he does or be able to have his way in the paint with some of his array of higher percentage shots. It's a different era. He would always be that great shooter. And I compare him a lot to a former NBA player from the Nuggets, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Very much so similar skill sets. Rauf, the second greatest free throw shooter in the history of the league. Yeah, this if I'm a Houston fan, I'm pissed because the guy that was supposed to change turn the tide for you. This is a team that was a 2 seed last year, early exit. A high seed not as high a seed this year. Once again, early exit against a Laker team missing their best player and an aging LeBron James. If I'm a Houston fan, I'm pissed. And if I'm a Houston fan, I don't want guys on my team that are not all the way in. And Kevin Durant never gives me that vibe that he's all the way in. He didn't in Brooklyn. Only time I ever felt it was in OKC until he shocked me and left. I never thought he'd leave OKC, or not like that anyway, and not go to the team that he was so close to beating. So in that regard, I give LeBron more props because LeBron took a very untalented Cleveland team to the finals early in his career. Some could suggest the Eastern Conference was kind of weak. Whatever. He still did it. What's a career low? Probably losing that first finals to Dallas. But a career high could certainly be winning the bubble championship. That was not easy for anybody in it because of what was going on in the country. And of course, coming back from 3-1 and defeating the Golden State Warriors, who, if they win that game, might go down as the greatest team of all time, jumping Jordan's Bulls. So much, in terms of history. But in case you're just jumping on now, my Game 7 predictions. Detroit over Orlando, and I think it's going to be a little ugly. 18 or more for Detroit. Let's go 117-99. I got Detroit eliminating Orlando tomorrow. I've got the Cleveland Cavaliers defeating the Toronto Raptors. I'm going to say like by 8 or more. And tonight's going to be a nail biter. Tonight could really go either way. But give me the Boston Celtics by 3 in OT. Going to be a classic. Neither outcome would shock me. And I'll tell you another thing that's not shocking me. I'm going to switch it over to baseball real quick. Ben Rice literally could be the American League MVP if he continues this production. And that's saying something when Aaron Judge is in that lineup. I'm still looking at the New York Mets and saying, when are they going to fire their manager? Of course, it's early and you just hope that things could turn around. But with the second highest payroll in baseball, and you have people in the fan base accusing Uncle Stevie of caring more about his casinos, it's going to be a hot mess in Queens if the Mets don't turn it around sooner than later. Atlanta Braves, they look good. And they have the best young catcher in all of baseball right now, in Drake Baldwin. And it's kind of cool to see the Athletics with a real shot, showing that they have the ability to possibly hang around this year, despite a huge disadvantage of being displaced and playing in a subpar stadium. The Athletics are hanging. So a lot of storylines in the early going of Major League Baseball. And a lot of teams that have been so bad for so long are actually quite respectable this year. Talking about the Pirates, the Rockies, Marlins are getting more respectability, and the White Sox. And Murakami leads the American League in home runs, one ahead of the pace on Aaron Judge right now. Ben Rice has 11. A lot of storylines in Major League Baseball. Closing thought, and I'm sure I'm going to talk about this more on the show until something gets announced or something happens. I'm going to make a bold prediction. I don't think it's that bold, but I'm going to make a prediction that Odell Beckham Jr. will not be joining the New York Giants this year. When I consider how uphill it's going to be for a guy who doesn't offer special teams flexibility and a guy who's 33 years old with a litany of injuries, it would be cool to see Odell back in the Giants uniform. I'm not going to lie. It'd be nice to bust out my old Odell jersey and wear it again. But outside of nostalgia, from a football-based standpoint, I am not convinced that this makes sense unless if Malik Neighbors is really going to take a little longer to come back. Because the two new additions via free agency, Calvin Austin and Darnell Mooney, are much younger and have contributed much more in recent memory. Jalen Hyatt is kind of an enigma. I don't know if he's going to make it this year with the Giants. I don't know if they have plans. Prior to Darius Slayton's recent injury, I thought he was a candidate to possibly get shot. They did bring in Malachi Fields from the University of Notre Dame, and they also picked up a phenomenal tight end in Isaiah Likely, who I think is going to really have a bust-out career season as the main man finally, as he has kind of been in between being the main man with an aging Mark Andrews in Baltimore. But the more I look at the uphill battle that it would be for Odell Beckham Jr. to make this Giants roster when the season starts, I'm not convinced. But there is an opening because of the sheer fact that I know that John Harbaugh definitely likes him. And I also think John Harbaugh likes the idea of someone with his NFL experience being a mentor. But it's still a roster spot. And as Harbaugh said, you still got to be able to play. So definitely something that I'm going to be monitoring, but I'm just going to say it now. What is it? May 2nd. I'm going to say it now. 9:47 East Coast time. Odell Beckham Jr. will not be signed by the New York Football Giants. Having said all that, there's a part of me that does want to see it happen, but it has to make sense, as Coach Harbaugh said. Until next time, I am Richie. If you haven't already, please make it a point to like and subscribe to the channel, the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast on YouTube. Check out our friends at the Casual Convo Show every Monday and Wednesday, 8 to 10 p.m. Check out our boy Johnny Nast. He has all kinds of stuff going on, ranging from the Sports Corner to the Basement Show with Mr. Nast. Check out our guy Sneaky G, Make It Count podcast. One of the biggest Giant fans you will ever run into. Had a real good time hanging with those dudes recently. Yeah, we'll see. It's got to make sense. You as well. You as well. Hope you have a great day, everyone, especially you, Mama. That's my biggest fan right there, Mom Dukes. Lastly, make it a point to check out Big Bosco Productions on Bandcamp. That's B-A-N-D Camp. They're on other streaming platforms as well. Idris Salah, master engineer, phenomenal producer, bringing back the boom bap era feel to hip hop. Also has a really amazing jazz album. And I haven't heard his newest project, but he told me it's pretty ratchet. But I'm a huge consumer of hip hop music of all different forms, and I will definitely be making it a point to continue to support my brother Idris Salah. I'm very proud of my co-host. He'll be getting back on the show in the near future, as will Mike Zappi. Spoke to him recently, and it's just, a matter of timing because, we all got a lot of busy stuff going on in addition to our passion here at the podcast. Also going to be getting Ryan Shedd back on the show. Recently got to hang out with him at Disney. Got to hang with his kids for a little bit. That was really cool. Out for now. Enjoy your weekend. Make good decisions. And Just enjoy whatever you're doing. I'm out.